My name is David Godwin, and I'm the director of Southern Fire Exchange at the University of Florida, and it's good to be here. It's good to see you guys. I also want to take just a minute and make sure I've been in the box in the back all day, and I wanted to say thank you to Lance Bass and to Anthony Free, who've been running the AV in here and making sure this thing works. And we have about 75 to 80 people who are on Zoom today. So I'm waving to all you people on Zoom. And thank you to these AV professionals who have been making all this work today, and they've made it really smooth and seamless. So it's awesome. And Chris asked me to talk about fire science, and I was just listening to Ludi, and I was like, I guess we should call it fire studies. So we have some fire studies, but no, really, a lot of this is going to be like technology and tools, because I'm kind of a tool guy, and I like equipment, and I like sharing information and tools that are not just the publications, but we're going to talk about some resources and stuff that might be of interest. Ludi gave us a good run-in. I'm not going to talk much about Southern Fire Exchange. At this point, you guys know about it. If you don't get our newsletter, you can zap the QR codes on the screen with your phone. You should be able to get all these links throughout the presentation without having to write really anything down, so that's good. We do have a newsletter. If you're not into getting QR codes with your phone, we just have a good old-fashioned piece of paper in the lobby, and you can just write your email down and get it. We do put a lot of fact sheets together, and our team has continued to put together fact sheets over time, and these are really designed to take publications that are written by scientists for scientists and translate it into something that's useful for people who actually do things outside. So we've got over 50 of them on our website. We've got a new one on synthesizing the research on ticks and tick-related diseases. So I'm just curious, raise a hand, how many people either have contracted a tick-related disease or know somebody who has? And my hand is raised as well. And if you look around the room in here, if you're online, it's like most people in here. So folks in the fire community and folks in the general public and in the medical community are all increasingly aware of the diseases that are being carried by ticks, the increasing prevalence of ticks across the country. And there's a lot of interest in understanding how fire can play a role in reducing those interactions. All right, another fact sheet we have here that just came out recently this summer is talking about pyrodiversity. And we had a lot of questions that have come in over the years thinking about how does fire size, so that's the scale, how does the timing and then the season, how does that all interact in time and space and then result in variability on the landscape? And then how does that impact the diversity that you see in the plants, the animals, and the insects across the landscape at different scales? So interested in those things, those are a couple fact sheets that we just have added. Fire science webinars, we continue to invest resources and time in putting those together, and we appreciate everybody who joins on those and has contributed presentations to those over the years. The big thing to know is if you miss one, don't freak out, don't worry. We have over 100 of the presentation recordings on our YouTube channel, and people continue to tell us that they're actually using those recordings as part of their RT-130s, as part of their refresher courses for wildland fire. The state of Texas uses some clips, some of those presentations as part of their annual certified burner courses that they offer. So there are there's continuing utility in there. And one thing I'll back up, there's always people in the room who are looking for SAF CFE credit. You know who you are, and I know who some of you are. And you can join these throughout the year if you're looking to try and get SAF credit 1 hour at a time over your lunch break. You can always join us, get some credits over the course of the year to maintain your forestry certification, and then and then you might learn something along the way, which is also fun. Lastly, on those, if there's a webinar that we haven't done and you'd like to see a webinar on it, please just come tell me, because we're really always trying to make sure that those are actually relevant and useful. Ludi talked about, I made a note about talking about prescribed fire year round. And sometimes your family may get tired of you talking about prescribed fire. Mine does. And so, we have podcasts. And we've got some folks in our region and all over, and I wanted to make sure to share some of these with you because it is an opportunity. It's a different way to learn something new about fire science, management, about communication. Throughout the course of the year, if you're on your commute, if you're on your way to a burn unit, just put it on in the truck if you haven't already. We have a great podcast that Mary Nell Armstrong with our team puts together called Friends of Fire. And we have a handful of episodes covering a range of topics. Ludi's been on there. And then she's also got episodes talking about Duff fire management, different variations of prescribed fire teams. But I wanted to make sure you know about this one, and this is auto advancing, so it's driving me a little bit nuts. And I'll try and back up if you haven't already noticed that. Fire University, if you haven't seen this one is really great. It's from Dr. Marcus Lashley at the University of Florida and Wildlife Department. He came to University of Florida a few years ago from Mississippi State. And he has, I think it's over 36, 37 episodes on there covering a wide range of topics. One of his specialties is if you know Marcus, is really looking at how fire plays in at different scales to habitat management with deer originally, and now he's focused quite a bit on turkey as well. Great resource. And then Coley Lord, I saw Coley is here today. You know, he's just from down the road in Gainesville, and he has a podcast that he's put together the past couple of years. It's a really great resource to hear some really engaging conversations with a lot of people that are either in this room or from our region. And he takes you into the field. You know, you can listen to the fire before you get to it, but he also sits down and has really some interesting, engaging conversations where people share you know, what they've learned over the course of their careers. And it's something to really check out and get into. This one, Fire Ecology Chats, is from the Association for Fire Ecology, and they have an online scientific journal. All right, it's a journal publication made by scientists for scientists. But in 8 minutes or less, so don't worry, you can hear them, the editor of the journal sits down and chats with some of the journal authors. And they just basically talk about their studies. And honestly, I like to listen to these in the car when I go pick up my kids from school, because it's 8 minutes. I'm sitting there stuck in traffic anyways. And you can learn something new, and it covers a wide range of topics. And it's certainly interesting to check out. And then lastly on this topic, I wanted to share with you this one called The Big Burn. And this is a podcast that I would suggest you take the time to listen to. It's about 26 episodes, and it's not about our region. It's not about the Southeast at all. It talks about the history and the current conditions and the future of wildland fire in California. And you'll hear some really interesting interviews with fire managers. You'll hear some interesting conversations with homeowners who are trying new things to overcome wildland fire challenges. And you'll hear some conversations with people who've lost everything. It's a really well-produced podcast, and it is worth your time to listen to. This thing is advancing, so it's helping me move along. We're going to pivot real quick and talk about some weather resources. And this one, you want to back up? You can see that one. There you go. Lightningmaps.org. I've talked about this one in presentations before in the past, and every once in a while I run into somebody who doesn't know about it. So if you don't have access to agency lightning data on your phone or on your desktop, this is a great resource. It's based on a nearly global network of free, I don't know how they do it, lightning detection sensors. And it will plot lightning strikes on your phone, or you can see it on your desktop in darn near real time. And I can tell you that because one day, years ago, my wife was driving home and I was talking to her on the phone, and I was at my desk and I had this up. It was a storm coming through Tallahassee. I had this on my desk, and I talking to Katie, and you hear pow in the background. And she said something that I can't say in front of this group. And I said, "Where are you?" And she told me the intersection that she was near in Tallahassee, and like seconds later, I see the little blip on the screen. I was like, "Whoa, that was really close." She's like, "Yeah, it was really close." And I was like, "No, actually, on the map, it should be the lightning strike that you just felt." So it works really well. I was at a meeting a couple years a couple years ago out at the TNC Bluffs and Preserves, and there was a vendor who brought out some really cool fire equipment. We were talking with them. Storm came through. It was May. I can't remember if anybody's here that was at that meeting. And golly, there was a strike that was like 100 yards from where we were standing. And, you know, you could smell the ozone. And we were all rather surprised, but you could see it right there on the map. This is an amazing resource. We use it. I've used it for making decisions about field work. I use it with my family when I'm going to take my kids out on scout group activities to look and see the light. And I was like, well, do we need to make a decision? This is a great resource. Drought.gov is another resource. We heard great presentations this morning talking about, you know, tracking and being aware of how drought conditions change over time. What I like about this resource, you can use the QR code or you can go to the website there. You can essentially use this, you can sign up for alerts. What that does is that means that you will get automatic email notifications when you put in a zip code or an address. I don't know if it's exact address, maybe just a zip code. But you can put a zip code in there, you can put in multiple zip codes. And as drought conditions change, either intensify or lessen for that particular location, you get an email notification. So if you're not already staying on top of what drought conditions are in a particular location, or maybe just want another email, that's another tool to keep up with. Fire environment mapping system is a new-ish tool that I have come across for accessing RAWS data. Previously, it seemed like if you wanted to access RAWS data, it was kind of a convoluted mess of clicks, and it was not very user friendly. But this new tool from the Fire Environment Mapping System, really it's a much more intuitive interface. You can zoom through if it really only pulls in RAWS stations. So, you know, if you depend on RAWS stations, this is a resource. You can really just zoom right in, find the RAWS station that you're looking for. Once you click on a RAWS station, it pulls up the data in a very easy to use and interpret way. You can see on the graph there at the top, on the left-hand side are the recorded data from the station. On the right-hand side are the predicted data. I'm thinking it's from National Weather Service gridded forecasts. And then below, where it says expand to show values, you can see tabular data for individual hours for observations for that station. So it's a pretty cool interface. Definitely, I think, much more useful for pulling up RAWS data. I'll talk a little bit about mapping tools and information. This one, didn't hold, CalTopo. Anybody ever used this resource before? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Handful of people, not a lot. So hopefully this is a new resource for you. You may not have seen before. How many folks have used Avenza Maps for a PDF map? All right, that's kind of what I was thinking. All right, everybody's used Avenza. Avenza's been around for a while. But how do you get a map put into Avenza, right? So Avenza works off GeoPDFs. If you don't have access to an ARC service, right? So ArcGIS, ArcMap, ArcYield, whatever it's called now. It changes every 5 years. If you don't have access to like an agency level ARC resource, getting those GeoPDF files can be a bit of a challenge, right? So here enters CalTopo. It's a website. It's free. You can pay for more features, but for the most part, just go to caltopo.com. And in your browser, you can build out a map. It already has a whole suite of built-in layers. I just threw this together. This is St. Mark's. And in a jiffy, you can put together an area that you want. This is seriously like a 3-minute task, an area that you want to print, and you're printing it to a GeoPDF at a new window in your browser. Next step, it spits that out. So you could print this out if you actually wanted a paper map. That's pretty cool. And on the right, you can see that you can use aerial imagery as a base map, or you can use other vector type files as a base map. You can customize it, so you can drop in points, you can drop in custom labels, you can even draw polygons if you want to draw a burn unit. This is a pretty cool resource. So then once you get to this, you'll see in the corner of each of those maps, in the lower right-hand corner, there's a QR code. You open up Avenza on your phone or on your mobile app, you point it, that little QR code in the right-hand corner of the map that CalTopo just spat out, you can load it right into the Avenza on your phone. Then you can share that to other people or whatever. It's really, really easy. So if you don't have access to ArcMap, or you don't want to even mess with it, put together a really quick map, CalTopo. Just remember that, CalTopo. So then, of course, everybody here knows about Avenza. Once you pull it into Avenza, right, you have all the resources available to Avenza. Even the free version lets you record tracks, plot locations, measure distances, save points, and all that kind of stuff. CalTopo is cool. Southeast Fire Map is a project that Tall Timbers, NRCS, and a whole bunch of other folks have been working on. They started it back before the pandemic, and they have continued to work on developing it. You may have seen presentations on it at some of the previous Prescribed Fire Council meetings. The gist of it is they're tasked with trying to make a seamless wall-to-wall map of the southeastern U.S. of fire occurrences. And that's independent of jurisdictional boundaries, crosses over state lines, all that stuff that's challenged fire mapping in the past, and at resolutions that are actually useful for making management decisions in our region, which is also a challenge that we've seen in the past. So far, they've made good progress. You can access this online for free. So we get into your browser. You have to create a free account, but that's not too complicated. It'll allow you to see burn history of that region on the map I just showed you of the Southeast, going back to 1994 to 2021 at an annual resolution. Right? So every year, you want to know what month it burned? Sorry, that's not part of the Southeast Fire Map right now. But it'll give you an annual resolution, and the areas that they have identified as burned in the Southeast map, they give it a 90 to 100% probability that it did in fact burn. That's pretty good. They're pretty confident that the stuff that they say burned, burned. And with that kind of confidence in that range going back to 94, that allows you to put together some maps that really give you a lot of information about fire return interval on the landscape. And then you can change how you depict that on the landscape. So, if this is a piece of property that you already manage, you know the fire history of, this is maybe not the most useful tool. But if you have neighboring properties where you've just acquired a piece of property, or you're working on a new place and you don't know what the fire history is on that place, the Southeast Fire Map may be a resource that can be helpful for you. As you all know, if you've worked in remote sensing in the Southeast, or just with satellite data on Google Earth, cloud cover is always an issue. With our understory burns, green up's fast. So when you combine green up and low severity fires with cloud cover, we tend to miss those kinds of fires on our maps that are using remote sensing. The folks at Tall Timbers who are working on Southeast Fire Map have started to pull in Sentinel satellite data, and that's a new satellite platforms, not Landsats from the European Space Agency. That doesn't really matter. What does matter is coming next spring, they expect to see a 300% increase in imagery that was otherwise lost to those clouded days over time. So that's pretty good. I think the end result is going to be a product that will be useful for the folks in this room. It'll be useful for folks in the air quality community who are looking to understand how much fire is on the landscape. And then the plan is to roll it out to a national product. The fire and smoke map is, yes, sir. Question. Yeah, so the question was about false positives in the Southeast Fire Map, and it basically misidentifying, misrepresenting other changes in surface, its reflectance, basically, from a satellite perspective, is fires. And yes, so I went to, and there's probably some folks here too, went to a workshop that the Southeast Fire Map folks did a couple weeks ago. And they do see, there are some misclassifications in there. They're pretty confident on that 90, 100% or whatever, 90%. that it is burned. But when they do have it, there's clear cuts. There are those reflective, basically reflectance changes that kind of trick it, because it's still based on Landsat, so it's still based on satellite observations. And if you have a lot of cases in that, then the folks at Tall Timbers were interested in getting feedback, because they can use that feedback to then train their algorithm to be better. The fire and smoke map, it's a product from the U.S. Forest Service and the EPA. I'm sure at this point you guys are probably aware of it, but if not, I think the big thing to know about, let me see, get to that one. Nope. Big thing to know about this one is that it now pulls in purple air sensor air monitors. You might know what a purple air monitor is. It's an off-the-shelf, commercially available, meaning like you and I could all just order one online and have it shipped to our house, air quality monitor. And that air quality monitor then feeds into a network of nationwide purple air quality monitors. And then basically everybody can see our air quality. From a burner perspective, knowing where those purple air stations are around your burn units could be advantageous. The purple air stations are not used to make determinations for like EPA violations, right? It's not the same as an EPA sensor or a state sensor. But purple air stations do get they do get published on this map and on the purple air map, and so communities are definitely aware of the air quality measurements that are being recorded by those purple air stations. So this map, from a prescribed burner perspective, is, I think, a useful tool to know where those are on the landscape. And lastly, I wanted to talk about, we're on the topic of smoke. This is something that our team has started to look into over the last year, and I think there's opportunities for folks in the prescribed fire community to at least be aware of these things. The gist of it is, there's a growing body of science. We can't argue, or studies. There's a growing body of studies, Ludi, that smoke is harmful for our health, right? We all know that, and we can't really hide from it. And there's a growing amount of evidence that this PM 2.5, which is that really small fraction of the smoke, that is quite hazardous to health, right? And in limited exposures, it can be hazardous to folks who are really sensitive in certain groups. And then over time, the evidence is mounting that it's hazardous to everybody. And so during some of the Western wildfire seasons over the past decade, where really some communities have just been socked in with wildfire smoke for weeks and months on end, there's been a lot of efforts at the consumer level, all the way up to the EPA, and then even some nonprofit groups to help people understand what kind of options they have to help promote cleaner indoor air. And so really the easiest way is to go and buy an off-the-shelf indoor air purifier. These are commercially available. These are some of them on the right. The EPA has evaluated them. Yes, they work. You close your doors, you close your windows, you turn one of these things on, almost like an air conditioner. It cleans the air in your house or in your school or in your place of work. The bad thing is they're expensive, and then they take expensive filters over time to keep them working. The good thing is, yes, they do work, and so they can be used to create safe indoor spaces for sensitive individuals. Well, because of the fact that the cost of those things was such an issue, there were some really clever and creative folks who started playing with ideas like, well, how could we work around this? How could we could DIY it, right? And come up with other alternative options to create clean indoor airspace. And so what you're looking at is a DIY indoor air cleaner. It's not a purifier, it's an air cleaner. But At the end of the day, it's a box fan you grab out of your garage, and you stick a fancy air conditioner filter on it, and the fan, you turn it on and you run it, and it actually pulls the air through the filter, and that's it. And you just run it. And it sounds crazy, and here's some pictures of them, and it looks like the whole thing is thrown together with duct tape, a fan and a filter, and it is. But you know, you can go a little bit more complicated. You could use a 3D printer to make a fancy clip, or you could just screw it in with some angle brackets or whatever. And a lot of people have been playing with these. And during the pandemic, when people were really worried about indoor air quality, right? They figure out, oh, COVID goes through the air. We should start sticking these things in school. Well, then some researchers did studies, evaluate these things, and the dang things work. And it sounds crazy, but they do. And this shows some measurements from the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency out west in Washington State. And the lower line is where they turned it on. That's the indoor, essentially PM 2.5 within the space. The top line is the outdoor, and they turned it on, and as long as the fan ran, it worked. And the EPA has looked at them, and other folks have looked at these things too, and they work. And there was a group out of Canada who did a big review of all these things and looked at all the studies, and they said, yep, they work. And if you want to read 40 pages to understand why these things work, you can. Or you can watch a webinar and also understand that, yes, they work. But the cool thing is, yeah, they do work. And you can build it yourself. And there's been some innovation, just like anything else, right? That has shown how to improve these things. And you can see this brown donut-looking deal. That's a sort of a cardboard shield that you can put around the fan, and basically it increases the rate at which the air is sucked through the fan and then pulled back out clean into the room. And they figure out, all right, well, what if we had more than one filter? What if we had 2 filters or 3 filters or 4 or 5, whatever? And so some of the more advanced designs actually use multiple filters, and basically it allows the same fan to reduce the pressure and then have more throughput of air, essentially cleaning the room faster over time, which is pretty cool. So we built one to start taking to fire festivals and other public events, just to see, you know, share with people about what these things are, share with the fire community that these things are out there, and talk about what kind of science is backing these up, studies are backing these up, and what kind of opportunities are there. So I think from the fire community's position, these kind of DIY air cleaners could be an opportunity to partner with like a scout group or a 4-H group or a Lions club or something like that to build connections and bridges with local communities and say, hey, yeah, we're making smoke, but you know, there are ways that you could protect yourself, or we can help reach out to sensitive individuals in our communities, and that it doesn't have to mean buy an expensive air purifier. You know, there are things that we can do that are actually not that expensive, and that can help create safe spaces for people. And also, it's an opportunity to engage in a conversation about prescribed fire, why we're producing some smoke every once in a while, and what the long-term goals of that are. So with that, appreciate your time. And you know, our goal as an exchange is to try and put together programs, presentations, and resources like we talked about to support the good work that you guys do. And if we are going astray or not focusing on those relevant topics, please let us know, because our ultimate goal is to be useful at the end of the day. Appreciate your time.